I'm first going to introduce you to Kathy Carroll, who is going to talk to us, or actually answer my questions about the Living Well programme. Kathy is one of our valued peer leaders of this programme and is very well placed to explain what is involved in this self-management programme. So welcome, Kathy.
Thanks, Caroline. Lovely to be here.
I thought we'd start by finding out a bit about how did you get involved, Kathy, in the Living Well programme?
Yeah, well, I suppose the best way to answer that, Caroline, is to give you a little bit of my background. So going back to my 20s, which is some time ago, I led a normal, healthy, happy life, and I was able to work in a profession that I loved, socialize, do all the things that we're supposed we don't have to think about when we have our health. So chronic disease unfortunately came knocking on my door in my 30s. So things just slowly but surely started to change, and I just noticed something was out of sync in my body. I had this debilitating fatigue, problems with my legs and mobility. And over time, over a long period of time, I was diagnosed with multiple autoimmune conditions, Hashimoto's, pernicious anemia, also microscopic colitis, PCOS, a musculoskeletal disorder, and a host of other conditions. I'm not going to list them all. And in more recent times, unfortunately, long COVID. I continued on in my profession, which, I loved as a teacher, but steadily it just became more challenging. I was picking up every infection under the sun, working with children, which would turn into a myalgia, which was sometimes worse than the infection itself. And eventually my body made the decision for me, and I had to give up my teaching profession. And that's not something I would have decided for myself. And it was, it was soul destroying. Because teaching was really my vocation, something that I loved doing. So I suppose I was now in a place that I really couldn't trust my body and just how unpredictable it was. Everything slowed down. My world became smaller. I was trapped in a body that just didn't match who I was as a person. And day-to-day tasks became more challenging. Spontaneity just went out the window. And I struggled hugely with the acceptance around this, even that word acceptance. There was isolation and a lot of judgment that I put on myself. Walking became more challenging. I had crashes and flares, which made it very difficult to plan ahead. And I felt like I turned into, I suppose, an unreliable person. Um, I which really didn't match who I am as a person. I self-sabotaged accomplishments that I was making and any progress that I made. And I suppose I was in a lockdown, pre-lockdown, and I didn't want to accept that this was my new reality. I had a lack of control and just so much uncertainty. And I was really faced with, who is this person? Who am I, essentially? And because the majority of my conditions are invisible, like you might be looking at me today and think, oh, you don't look like you've anything wrong with you. This made it more difficult because if you have a broken limb, people can actually see it. And there's also a timeline to recovery. Whereas with chronic conditions, quite a lot of them are invisible. So what goes hand in hand with that is that lack of understanding. You can be having a good day and someone might say, oh, you look brilliant, and think you're better. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And, there's also a lack of understanding, I suppose, on good days, the level of pacing and planning and effort that's got into that. People do want that good news story, but unfortunately, that's generally not the reality with chronic conditions. So to answer your question, Caroline, that's when thankfully, the Living Well program came along for me. I saw an advert and I signed up through CHO9. And it was an online program, so a bit like we are now virtually. It was a 6-week chronic disease self-management online program. And it really couldn't have come at a better time for me. It was just that right time. And it really was one of those light bulb moments. So we were in a virtual room together, like we are now, rather than a community setting. But straight away, I was just put at ease as a participant. It was so clear from the very beginning that it was a space of understanding, it was a safe space, and it was a confidential space. And other participants that were on at the same time as me, you know, a lot of us had different chronic health conditions. But that didn't matter, because what became so clear and evident was that the challenges and the struggles that we faced were very, very similar. And it was a really important reminder that I wasn't alone, that I wasn't the only person going through this. And what was so comforting were that challenges were just understood in this space without giving a lengthy explanation. One word, and people just got it. And my focus, I suppose, slowly then started to shift from that mindset of, you know, I can't do this or can't do that, to, you know, what can I do? And I can do things, and maybe not in the same way, you know, that I used to be able to do, but I certainly still can do things. So over the 6 weeks, together we explored the self-management toolbox, which had 12 tools, and we just looked at ways of how we could take that control back as self-managers and really break that symptom cycle at different points. So the focus, I suppose, really was, you know, controlling what you can. And a big one was gaining the confidence to do this as a self-manager.
Brilliant. That's really good, Kathy. And then you went on to train as a peer leader for the program. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I suppose I just got so much from the program. There was so much value. It was so empowering. And I suppose what really struck me as well was the fact that one of the facilitators delivering the program was living with chronic health conditions. So I think that really was the magic of it and what made it so relatable. So I suppose the fact I got so much from it, I really wanted to explore of how I could actually, you know, give back, I suppose. So I took the training, and I now deliver the chronic disease self-management program, and I also took cross training to deliver the chronic pain self-management program and the building better caregivers, which are also two other programs in that host of the Living Well programs, which are delivered through CHO9. So the delivering my training was online, but now what is lovely is that there's that blend of both online programs and also in-person programs. So there's that space for the two. So as for some people, online is the only way they can take part and they're more comfortable. They can really look after their needs, and other people prefer the in-person. So they're both offered. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Kathy. And it's great that you spoke about different versions of the program. I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So can you tell us then what's involved in a program?
Yeah, sure. Well, just as you mentioned in the intro, Caroline, it's a free program, first of all, which is a big thing because, you know, when we're living with chronic conditions, it's an expensive business. It's a scripted evidence-based program, and it's licensed through the SMRC in California, which is the Self-Management Resource Center. So online, it's over 7 weeks because there's something called a session 0, which is just an introductory session to get everybody comfortable logging on and to take that stress away before it starts in earnest in the first week. In person, it's 6 weeks, and it's for 2.5 hours. Now, if you're listening into this today and you're thinking, oh my goodness, 2.5 hours seems like an awful long time. And I have to admit, when I was a participant, I actually had that reaction thinking, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, you know, to manage 2.5 hours or to sit. But just to reassure everybody, it's broken up so well. It's interactive. There's so many different activities in it. And everybody is really encouraged to look after their needs and their comfort. So, you know, there's stretch breaks, there's a break itself. And, you know, people can really look after their needs, and the time goes by so quickly. And it's offered by, there's two trained facilitators. As I mentioned earlier, one of the facilitators must be living with a chronic health condition. And again, I think that's a prerequisite of the program. And I think that's why it works so well. You don't have somebody speaking to you that's, you know, doesn't understand. It's coming from a place of understanding the challenges and struggles that go hand in hand with chronic conditions. And I suppose to explain it a little bit better, I might just share a slide which really highlights what the whole program is about. Okay, this is really what the Chronic Disease Self-Management Program is about. So if we can see there on the left of the slide, we have a symptom cycle, which has poor sleep, physical limitations, pain, stress, difficult emotions, low mood and depression, shortness of breath, fatigue, and back up to poor sleep. Okay. And I'm sure some of you listening in today can identify with some of those symptoms, or possibly all of them. So the whole idea behind this program is, if we look to the left, we have our self-management toolbox. So these are the 12 tools that are covered over the 6 weeks. Okay. And these are the tools that are really helping us to self-manage and break that symptom cycle at different points. So if we can visualize a big lightning bolt going from that self-management toolbox to the symptom cycle. Okay. Now, that symptom cycle, it doesn't always go round in that perfect circle. You know, symptoms can crisscross and zigzag from one to another as well. So it's all about asking yourself in the moment, what do I need right now? That's really going to help me to self-manage. So I might just go through the different tools just to give you an idea. So right up at the top there, we have physical activity. Okay, so physical activity can really break that symptom cycle at any point. Now, when I did this program, I was quite nervous when I heard physical activity and exercise, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to do any of this. So just to reassure everybody that when physical activity is covered in this program, it's always geared to where everybody is at, which is probably different for every single person. Then we also look at medication, so medication usage, decision making. So decision making, action planning, and problem solving, they're those core skills in our toolbox. Okay, those three. So they're covered in just about every session. So everybody gets very confident using them. And they also have the added benefit of really maximizing the other tools in the toolbox. So looking at decision making, it can be extremely difficult at the best of times, but in particular, if you're living with a chronic health condition, you know, you're trying to make a decision during a time of unpredictability and uncertainty. So going through this process as a group, using the pros and cons technique, and then checking in with your gut or intuition is hugely helpful for any decisions, whether it's in relation to your healthcare condition or just a life decision. Action planning is something that is done every week in the program. So it's really about setting a doable, achievable, realistic goal for yourself and breaking it down into steps, very specific steps. And then the following week, you're feeding back to the group how you got on. And if you do run into any problems or issues, there's a chance to practice problem solving. I found action planning hugely helpful, because before that, I might have a goal in mind of something that I'd like to do, but I just found it too daunting to even get started with. So I just wouldn't, and it wouldn't happen. Whereas an action plan actually puts that moving and into reality, and it's all about taking that first step. And it really also helped me with my confidence too. So the other core tool there is the problem solving. So as problems come up during the sessions, we have a chance as a group to problem solve and come up with ideas and solutions to really help to solve the problem. Breathing techniques is covered. Breathing techniques, obviously very helpful for anybody with lung or heart issues, but I think it's one that everybody can benefit from, whether if we're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, stressed. So breathing techniques are practiced. Sleep, getting a good night's sleep, a lot of very helpful tips around that. Using your mind. So the using your mind tool, it really highlights the power that the mind has over your body. And we're introduced to techniques such as distraction, body scan, helpful thinking, guided imagery. Understanding your emotions. I found that one particularly helpful because I kind of pushed my emotions to one side when I was diagnosed with my first few conditions. But they play a huge part in both our physical and mental health. Communication and how to communicate more effectively with friends and family about our condition. Also with our healthcare professionals. And just as important, how we communicate with ourselves. So there's an activity solely for that to really look at how we speak to ourselves. Healthy eating, there's 3 activities in total on healthy eating in the program, but nobody is told what and how to eat. But instead of that, you're offered the tools and the information to make those mindful decisions for yourself. And the final one is working with healthcare providers. So really how to maximize that short time that we have when we are in with our at our appointments. So to look at the communication around that. And we also cover how to prepare what to do between follow-up appointments. So a huge amount of information is covered. So I'll just take that down.
Kathy, that's a really comprehensive overview of a program for anyone who maybe is thinking about, joining a program, or I suppose anybody who maybe a healthcare practitioner who wants to recommend a program for somebody. And then can I ask you, how has the program impacted your life? What kind of benefits have you seen?
Oh, well, it's benefited me hugely. I really can't say. Even that, just that, I suppose, am I still living with these chronic health conditions? Yes, I am. But what's shifted and changed is my ability to self-manage. Even that term was a new term for me before I signed up to the program. The biggest thing I suppose I've noticed is that I just have more control and more focus on the things that I can do. And my mindset has absolutely shifted to focus more on the things I can do, adapting to the now, I suppose. And I'm more confident in managing my healthcare condition. So, we spend a very short time each year at our appointments, but yet we're living with these conditions 24/7. So I've certainly got a lot more confident in managing it. I'm definitely getting more out of my appointments when I go because, I've all those tools to really prepare and get the most from it. Action planning is just part of my life now, where I really, on a Sunday evening, generally, I sit down and I prioritize something I'd like to do for myself during the week. I'm really listening to my body, and I have a connection with others who understand, whereas before there was certainly that element of isolation, but even delivering the program, being with other facilitators who understand, and really picking up nuggets of new information from participants every single program. So I suppose I have a toolbox now in my back pocket to navigate my condition, and they're really life skills. So, if you're living with a chronic condition, absolutely this is so helpful, but these are really tools that can help us with things that life throws at us. It's, and there's always new nuggets of information. So I'm constantly been fueled by that. Yeah. So
Okay.
big changes.
Great, that's really positive, Kathy. And I suppose lastly then, for people who are listening, how can people find out more about the program and how can they enroll on a program, hopefully?
Okay, so well, hopefully, I've obviously got so much from this, and if you're listening today and you're thinking, yeah, this is something that I'm curious about for myself or for a family member, or, you know, maybe signposting a client or a patient to, Grace has kindly put the information in the chat of how you can access information around the Living Well program. So the Living Well program, there's a whole suite of programs offered. So there's the chronic disease self-management program. There's also a chronic pain self-management program, building better caregivers for family carers, and there's also the cancer thriving and surviving. So really the best way is if you click into the link Grace has popped into the chat there, that's going to give you all the information. And she's also going to put in the email address. So if you have any more questions before you register, you can drop an email to the coordinator. There's 2 email addresses gone into the chat there. And yeah, and it's very easy to access. And whether you're interested in an online program or an in-person program, if you drop an email, our coordinator Louise will be able to let you know what's coming up, both online and in person. And it's a very simple process to register, and it's free. So if it's something that you think you would like to do, I'd absolutely encourage you today, don't wait around, send that email, read up on the program. And I should just quickly mention, as well as when you take part in the program, you get a pack and you get a fantastic book. It's a Living a Healthy Life with Chronic Conditions. It's the 5th edition. So this program started back in the 70s. It's really moved with time and science. So much information in this book, more than there is even time to cover in the 6 weeks. And the program and the book really go hand in hand. So again, at the end of the 6 weeks, you have your toolbox. You also have this book, which is a bit like a toolbox that you're going to be dipping in and out of, depending on what's going on in your life.
Brilliant. That's great. I think that's fantastic, Kathy. I think that's given a really good overview of the program, and I suppose more importantly of your experience, both as a, if we'll say, patient on the program, and also then as a trained peer leader who delivers the program for us here in this area. So I would like to, we take Q&As at the end of the session, but I just would like to thank Kathy for taking the time to share her experience. And I think it really highlights the importance of self-management, and, you know, having this program really does support that. So thank you very much to Kathy. And
thanks, Caroline.
Thank you.